Elizabethan acting. State Standard HS1.T.CN1.A. Investigate how cultural perspectives, community ideas, and personal beliefs impact a theatrical work. By the year 1600, there were 11 professional playhouses in London, and each one held approximately 3,000 audience members. Despite the fact that these playhouses were considerably smaller than ancient Greek theaters in terms of audience capacity, they were not acoustically perfect. So even though they were much smaller, it was a lot harder to hear what was happening in an Elizabethan theater as opposed to an ancient Greek one. To compensate for the audio issues, Elizabethan acting became very physical. Aside from just saying their lines very loudly, Elizabethan actors used a lot of rhetorical gesture. A rhetorical gesture is a physical movement that aids in communication. In other words, a rhetorical gesture is something that I can do with my body to help you understand what I'm saying. There are different kinds of rhetorical gesture, and most of us use all of them from time to time. An emphatic gesture is a gesture that either underscores or reinforces what is being said. If you've ever been in trouble and your mother clapped her hands at you on every syllable and said something like, "Listen to me," your mother has used an emphatic gesture. She did something with her body to underscore or reinforce what she was saying. An affective gesture is universally understood to indicate a specific state or emotion. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, these gestures mean the same thing. For example, if you were cold, make that gesture right now. Most of us are crossing our arms and rubbing our biceps. That gesture is universal. It doesn't matter where in the world you are, that gesture means I'm cold. An indicative gesture clarifies what you're talking about. Indicative gestures are a fancy way to say pointing, but you can point with any part of your body. For example, if you were talking to your friend and their crush walked into the room behind you, and you wanted to point to let your friend know that their crush was in the room, but you didn't want to actually use your finger, what gesture would you use? Would you tilt your head? Would you cut your eyes in that direction? Those kinds of motions are also indicative gestures. Imitative gestures pantomime a common activity. If you are on the opposite side of the room from someone and you need them to send you a text message, what gesture would you use to show them that you want them to text you? What gesture would you use if you wanted them to call you? A preparatory gesture tells the listener that you are about to speak. Often, we will use this when we're about to give a speech and we need the audience to quiet down. So, for example, standing up in front of a room and putting both my hands in the air is a kind of preparatory gesture. We also do this when we are interrupting someone else or we feel that someone has interrupted us. We will throw a hand up almost right in front of their mouth to hush them and let them know we would like a turn to talk. The opposite of a preparatory gesture is a terminating gesture, something that indicates that you have finished speaking. For most of us, this is when we bring our hands back to our sides when we are done with what we wish to say. But sometimes you can have terminating gestures like waving goodbye that let people know more directly that you are in fact done with the conversation. So we need to take a break from history for a moment and talk about a little bit of acting theory. Just bear with me for a moment. When it comes to acting and the best approach to a character or performance, there are two basic schools of thought. There's inside-out acting and outside-in acting. Inside-out acting is any school of thought that teaches that the actor has to feel like their character before they can act like their character. These kinds of actors believe that if your character is happy in a scene, then you, the actor, must also be happy or you won't be able to give a quality performance. If your character is sad, then you, the actor, must also be actually in real life sad. What kinds of problems might actors have with this kind of approach? What happens if you can't make yourself sad or happy? What happens if the way you are sad looks different from what people expect? The problem with this approach is that when you focus on feeling, it's easy to forget to show the audience what you're feeling. The audience cannot see your emotions unless you put them on display. An audience cannot see what you are thinking unless your body communicates that. Many actors, especially new actors, get stuck inside their heads using this technique. Some actors will put themselves through the ringer trying to feel like their characters, especially method actors. The method is an acting theory that's infamous at this point. Infamous is a word that means famous for a bad thing. The method is an acting theory that focuses on developing the inner life of the character. The thinking is, the more you can relate to what your character's going through, the more you can put yourself in your character's shoes, the more realistic and engaging your performance will be. Method actors use techniques like emotional recall to drag up the proper emotions of their characters. If, for example, you are playing a character whose grandfather has just died and you have lived through the death of a loved one, the method teaches that you have to make yourself relive the moment when you found out that your loved one died and apply that to the scene that you're playing. True method actors believe that in order to play a role properly, you have to have had the same experiences as your character, or experiences that are as close as possible to what your character has gone through, which can be a problem. To use the example we just touched on, what if you've never lost a loved one before? Some actors subscribe to the method, but some don't use any kind of an inside-out approach at all. This is a still from the movie Marathon Man. The older gentleman is Laurence Olivier, world famous for being an exceptionally talented actor. The younger man, the one with his mouth open, that's Dustin Hoffman, also famous for being a really good actor. Sir Laurence Olivier is not an inside-out actor. He is of the old school belief that the only thing that matters in a performance is what the audience can see. Whereas Dustin Hoffman is a method actor and believes that you have to have lived the experiences of your character. In Marathon Man, there's a scene where Dustin Hoffman's character has not slept in 2 or 3 days, hasn't taken a shower in 2 or 3 days, and is 3 sheets to the wind drunk. As a method actor, to prepare for that scene, Dustin Hoffman didn't sleep for 2 or 3 days, didn't take a shower in 2 or 3 days, and before he showed up to work that day, got blackout drunk. Laurence Olivier was furious that his acting partner had shown up to his job in such a state and chewed him out. Through his drunken haze, Dustin Hoffman tried to explain himself by saying, "Mr. Olivier, I'm method. You have to live the experience of your characters." To which Mr. Olivier replied, "Son, have you never heard of acting?" Laurence Olivier would be classified as an outside-in actor. This is a school of thought that asserts that the actor should create the physical and vocal elements of their character so the audience can easily see what's going on with that character. This school of performance is as old as acting itself, but its modern incarnation developed as a reaction against the method. This school of thought teaches that it doesn't matter if the actor actually feels sad, so long as the audience thinks the actor feels sad. To an outside-in actor, vocal and physical control are more important than finding the right emotions. Based on what you know of the Elizabethans, which of the two theories do you think they believed in? outside-in acting as we would recognize it today was developed by Sanford Meisner. 400 years ago, the Elizabethans were doing basically the same thing.